leaders in response to President Cyril Ramaphosa's Tumamina call. Ntogwana Nkatana joins us from Champagne Valley in KwaZulu-Natal, where the forum is currently underway. Ntogwana, inclusivity is a word I hear being bounced around often today, but not so easy to achieve, taking into account our divisive past and an economy that remains skewed in favor of a few.
Well, yes, Kirshni. Well, as you can see behind me, the guests have started arriving, and they inclusively, they include veterans, they include economists, statisticians, engineers, but also young people are here because, as you've said, this event comes on the eve of Youth Day tomorrow, but it's also during Youth Month. And so while we are talking generally about inclusive growth in the country, we're talking about the impact of state capture in the country, we're talking about how to move forward in terms of strengthening the state, in terms of including young people, in terms of the role of the media and other issues that will be discussed here, land, jobs, to come out with a document that will help to see that message through of inclusivity. But the main thing here is around future generations and the South Africa that we want tomorrow. And one person who's going to talk to me about that is a presenter and actor on Expressions in SABC, and his name is Mxolisi Masango. Mxolisi, you are one of half of South African youth who work. Is it obvious to you that 50% of the youth in this country are unemployed?
Well, Ntagwana, thank you so much for having me. And you're speaking about a very crucial statistic here. We're talking about 3.3 million youths who are currently unemployed. Bigger portion of that is people who have graduated. So I'm looking forward to coming to this platform and not only engaging, our thought leaders, but also just finding out how are we willing to go forward as young people, hand in hand with our leaders to find a solution to this situation of unemployment that we currently face here in South Africa. I think it's a great thing that we have such platforms where we're not only using it as a platform to look good as young people and come here and talk shop, but to also see those decisions that are taken in such platforms being implemented going forward. Because as a fellow journalist myself, having to be out there on the ground, speaking to young people, unemployment continues to be the most, the top priority for most young people. Young people would tell you, we're not expecting any handouts. We're just expecting, just a step forward. We need to know what our leaders doing about that. So it's going to be interesting to find out what's going to come out of this platform in terms of addressing issues such as unemployment. As you've also mentioned, the land issue is also very important. So I look forward to this engagement here.
Now, Mxolisi, you engage with young people a lot. Do young people understand where the country comes from? Do they understand the roots of inequality in the country? Do they appreciate what it is that they have to do themselves to rid the country of inequality?
Fascinating enough, this past Tuesday I was doing a special Youth Day special on Expressions, which is also on the 4 platform. I found that young people still feel the message of June 16 is somehow distorted. Most of them in the townships, you'd go to them, you'd find that they feel June 16 is a time to go partying, as a time to go drinking, and that's not what it really entails. We spoke to the likes of Obaba or Seth Mazibuko, who came out to say that it's very important that we as young people are the ones who use what they fought for back in 1976 as a tool of transformation in 2018, to have conversations amongst us young people, to say it's very important for us not to distort that message, not to distort everything they fought for back in 1976. So I think us as young people still have a long way to go in terms of really finding out what June 16 really means.
Now let's talk about the fact that the country is now considering introducing history. What level do you think you should have learned history at?
Well, that's a very, contentious issue in terms of whether you want to learn history or not, as a compulsory subject. But I really think it's very important for us young people to know where we come from. And I think something that stood out in one interview I did on my show as well was that one person said to me, it's really pointless for us to know where we're going if we really don't know where we're coming from. So it's very important, not for just us, but for our children that come behind us, for as well as the other generation that comes behind us, to know exactly where we come from. Because how are we going to steer conversations in the right direction when we don't know where we come from?
Inclusivity of young people is one of the subjects that will be discussed here. Are young people included enough in planning, in strategizing for the country's economy future?
I feel there's a lot to be done, although there is some work and groundwork that's being done currently, but I feel young people need to be engaged further. I remember I also did a show on the Yes campaign where they bring up some students to come in, in a sort of an incubation and internship levels that they've been doing for young people, trying to make it more inclusive, trying to make them participate in the economy of the country. But I feel, Ntakwane, when we go into the grass levels, ground levels, you feel that young people still don't feel like they're being engaged enough. Young people don't feel like they have a voice enough. For example, I spoke to a young man who said that how can you have a person and call him the youngest person in a certain field when they're like 40 years old? And he made an example of an article that was published about a financial advisor who was termed the youngest financial advisor in the field, and he was like 40 years old. And this boy said to me, Mxolisi, I think we'd be in a better position if we have young solutions that are brought by young people for a young generation. That's the only way where we will be able to have young solutions which are able to steer the country in a proper direction, because they say the youth is the future of the country after all.
And yet young people are not getting involved in politics.
Indeed, in Ntakwane, well, we fear politics. Politics, we leave it to the bigger fish, to get into politics. But we've seen on Twitter how young people are getting further involved. As you mentioned, with state capture, we saw, on social media, young people getting so involved, having their say in what they think has been happening in the country, and of course actively participating in the country's political discourse. Nothing is as spectacular for me as that, especially when we celebrate the centenary Gadatu Nelson Mandela. For me, that that just gives me hope that young people continue to be the future of the country.
Well, Kgalema Motlanthe Masango is a presenter on Expressions on SABC, and young people are beginning to arrive and to take part in the Inclusive Growth Forum of the Kgalema Motlanthe Foundation here in Drakensberg.
That was our report in Ntakwane, coming to us from Champagne Valley in KwaZulu-Natal, where the Inclusive Growth Forum is currently underway. We'll be dipping into proceedings there for the rest of the afternoon, so do stay locked on to the SABC News channel. Pearl standing by.